Fighting against foreclosure. California, now the first state to crack down on the biggest banks, making it more difficult for them to prey on homeowners and foreclose on them. The law would block lenders from foreclosing while the homeowner seeks alternatives. And it takes it a step further by allowing homeowners to sue the banks to stop the foreclosures from happening. In a troubled housing market, could this be the beginning of reforming the industry? And could it be a glimmer of hope for thousands of homeowners that are struggling to make ends meet and keep their homes? To talk about this is Richard Esco, he's a senior fellow for the Campaign for America's Future. Welcome there. So could this be a way to kind of empower empower homeowners, this new law?
Well, as the California Attorney General herself said, it's a start. It does, by giving them, the law does several things, the proposed law, the governor hasn't signed it yet, but it does several things, one of which is it allows homeowners who have been mistreated and against whom state laws have been broken to sue their lender. And I think that could be very important, could be a big shift. And it would be a first step. The state's penalties for breaking the law in this bill are fairly weak, but if homeowners can sue and get relief under the law, that could be something. So it's a step.
Okay, so you think that this is a first step possibly in reforming the industry, the mortgage industry?
Sure. The law basically does two things. One is it says don't break the law, and it makes it more explicit what that means, although many of the many of the things that this law makes illegal were already illegal, so that's going to create some confusion. The forging of documents, what they call robo-signing, is punishable potentially by a $7,500 fine if it happens over and over again, but that's forgery and or perjury, which is already illegal. So, there's going to be some confusion about whether you can still arrest people for that as a criminal act if a banker does that, or a banker's representative. But if you give people the right to sue, that does give them certain leverage that they didn't have before, and that's what we're counting on. The other piece that the law does is it basically says to banks, you can't be, I was going to use a different word, but you can't be jerks about this. You can't string people along and take their money and pretend you're renegotiating while you're secretly foreclosing on them at the same time. And you have to give them one point of contact that they can, because people have been run around and given different people to talk to every time they call. So it also makes it illegal to be a jerk.
And so, over there in California, foreclosure is a huge problem. 700,000 homeowners face foreclosure. So to what extent do you think that this new law can help struggling people stay in their homes?
Well, to a certain extent, that's been addressed, inadequately, but addressed by the major foreclosure fraud settlement we saw, which involved a number of the lenders. This will include other lenders. The question is, will these people get the legal help they need? We're talking about a lot of homeowners. We're talking about a lot of potential law breaking and misbehavior. The parts of it that apply to not being a jerk aren't retroactive. So the question becomes, will these people be able to get the legal resources, whether it's lawyers that work on contingency or whatever it might be, or legal aid, to help them keep their homes? And that's the piece that people are really going to have to mobilize for next.
Now, on the other side there, lenders are concerned that this will encourage frivolous litigation. What do you think about that?
Well, any right to sue anybody for any reason raises the possibility of frivolous litigation. I don't think there are a lot of underwater homeowners out there with a lot of money to spare on lawyers to frivolously litigate. But the fact is, the only way to be 100% sure that there is never frivolous litigation is by denying people their legal rights. So this gives people their legal rights. Is there an outside chance that somebody somewhere might frivolously litigate? I guess, but it's hard to make that moral argument if you're a bank that's been mass producing forged documents year after year after year.
Now, activists, what they want to see in this industry is more transparency, more fairness, more protection from foreclosures. Do you think that this new law can help to achieve that?
Sure. As I was saying, it's definitely a step in the right direction. People will be a little bit more reluctant on the banking side of things to break the law if they know they can get sued for it, but they're going to wait and see how many people actually do take action under this law. And if it's very few, they'll go ahead and figure it's worth the risk. So it gives homeowners another opportunity to fight for their rights. It's definitely, we applaud that, but it would be a big mistake to say, okay, we've got our victory in California, we can stand down now. This is the beginning of the fight, not the end of it.
And well, California is the first state. We should mention that the governor still needs to sign it. He still needs to sign the bill. But do you expect other states to follow suit as a way to address the foreclosure crisis?
Well, that's going to depend to a large extent on the willingness of the public to press their officials to do this. We're already seeing a number of states where money that was awarded to help homeowners is being used instead for other purposes, to pay off a government deficit so that taxes can be kept low for the wealthy or whatever. So people are going to have to stay on their elected officials if they want to see this law and even stronger laws passed in other states. So that's really going to be a matter of, as so many things are, of whether citizens force their leaders to push for laws like this.
Now, it's been quite a while. This has kind of been brewing for a while. I mean, since the financial collapse and since the recession kind of sparked it back in 2008. But at this point, is it possibly too little too late for a lot of people?
Sure, of course. I mean, sadly, it is. I mean, sadly, a lot of people have been illegally foreclosed upon already. A lot of people were deceived and manipulated by banks that took their money for a year or two and they had no intention of allowing them to stay in their homes. A lot of people have already been foreclosed upon with forged documents, and there's very little anywhere, including in the fraud settlement agreement, that gives them real restitution for what's happened to them. We can't go back and rewrite history, although I wish we had prosecuted some of the more egregious criminal acts that the banks committed instead of settling them out. But we can't change history, but we can fight for the best we can going forward.
All right, and as you had mentioned before, this is just the first step in the right direction. But I guess what else needs to be done in order to really reform the system and make it more fair to everybody?
Well, I think one thing is nothing says reform like indictments for breaking the law. So I think people ought to be pressuring the White House and the Justice Department and Congress and everyone else. Where are the investigations you promised us? The president announced a mortgage fraud task force months ago with great fanfare. We've seen nothing. We ought to be, the White House ought to be deluged with calls demanding that something be done. I think there are groups like the Home Defenders League, which is a group, I think they're homedefendersleague.org, that defends underwater homeowners. I think people should work with groups like that, go to different websites. We have some information at ourfuture.org, but there are many places people can go to find out how to demand better action from their lawmakers on defending homeowners' rights.
All right, so but at least for now, this seems to serve as some kind of a glimmer at hope, at least for the folks in California.
Right, it's a start.
All right, Richard, thank you so much for coming on the show. That was Richard Esco. He's a senior fellow for Campaign for America's Future.